To wake up each morning is to receive a fresh invitation to shape the next sequence of hours. Yet that power can feel fragile when stacked against the uncertainty woven into the fabric of ordinary life. The alarm clock might ring with promise, but anxieties often sit on the edge of the bed before our feet do. We sense tasks waiting impatiently, relationships needing care, cultures competing for attention, and global news flooding every screen. In such a landscape, placing the day into God's hands is neither escapism nor abdication of responsibility. Instead, it is the choice to root every moment inside a deeper story, the story of a creator who knows the number of our breaths and the hidden map of our years. It is a practical posture, not a poetic abstraction, directing ordinary decisions with sacred perspective. This practice begins with acknowledging that time itself is a gift. Ancient Hebrew poetry calls mornings new mercies, suggesting that sunrise is more than a predictable, astronomical event. It is a ceremonial unveiling of possibility. If the hours ahead are a wrapped present, placing the day in God's hands means letting the giver guide the unwrapping. The alternative is to lunge forward clutching control, which often leads to hurried spirits and brittle expectations. To surrender the day does not shrink ambition. It purifies it, aligning goals with the gravity of divine purpose. It transforms breakfast tables and board meetings into altars where ordinary actions can be offered with extraordinary intent. Such surrender is profoundly countercultural, because modern narratives champion autonomy as the highest good. The self-made storyline urges individuals to design, optimize, and hustle their own destinies. Yet the same culture simultaneously reports skyrocketing anxiety, burnout, and loneliness. These statistics whisper that self-sovereignty, while thrilling in theory, grows heavy in practice. Placing one's day in God's hands therefore stands as a rebellious declaration that we were never meant to bear the full weight of existence alone. It rescues agency from isolation and anchors it in relationships. While hands remain on the steering wheel of practical tasks, the heart yields ultimate navigation to a wisdom that sees beyond traffic and detours. Morning is the seam between yesterday's lessons and tomorrow's possibilities, a slender moment when the soul can bend toward hope or slump beneath apprehension. In that fragile sliver of time, the human heart stages a quiet referendum on trust. Will the coming hours be ruled by anxious self-reliance or consecrated into the hands of the one who authored time itself? Long before alarms existed, ancient worshippers met dawn with songs that braided awe and expectancy. This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Those words are not nostalgic lyrics from a simpler era. They are a daily summons to transfer ownership of the day from trembling fingers to nail-scarred hands. Placing your day in God's hands does not deny the reality of spreadsheets, traffic jams, or medical tests. It acknowledges them with eyes wide open, yet insists that none of these carry ultimate authority. It is an act of intellectual honesty about human limitation and an act of spiritual audacity about divine sufficiency. Some imagine surrender as a kind of disengagement, a passive floating downstream. In truth, it resembles the moment a mountaineer fastens the final carabiner to a stable anchor. Energy, skill, and decision-making still matter, but life-preserving security no longer depends on raw grip strength. The anchor bears the burden. Similarly, when you commit the day to God, you still brainstorm, dialogue, and choose. Yet the existential weight transfers to shoulders strong enough to bear universes. This perspective revolutionizes our experience of time itself. Hours are no longer a commodity to hoard or a tyrant to outrun. They become sacramental vessels through which grace flows. Sunrise signals a liturgy the cosmos has practiced since Genesis. light dispelling darkness, chaos giving way to ordered goodness, possibility emerging from nothingness. When you consciously entrust this cycle to God, ordinary tasks take their place inside a cathedral of meaning. Paying bills becomes stewardship, answering messages becomes ministry, rest becomes worship. Even unexpected detours acquire sacred undertones, for if God is sovereign over minutes, then interruptions may hide invitations. Our cultural moment, however, militates against such trust. We navigate an attention economy that monetizes worry and rewards relentless productivity. Notifications pace like drill sergeants, algorithms predict desires before we articulate them, and success is quantified in metrics that reset at midnight. Against this backdrop, surrender feels counterintuitive, perhaps even irresponsible. Yet consider the psychological fallout of perpetual self-dependence. Burnout statistics soar, social isolation deepens, and mental health professionals describe epidemics of anxiety. This suggests that autonomous mastery, while glamorized, exacts a toll the soul was never built to pay. Into this weary landscape, the practice of placing your day in God's hands rises not as sentimental piety, but as a pragmatic antidote to cultural fatigue. It recenters identity on eternal affection rather than fluctuating performance, and replaces frantic urgency with purposeful presence. Historically, men and women who changed the world, from reformers and scientists to poets and activists, often began their days in reflective surrender. Their journals reveal a pattern. Before tackling societal injustices or intellectual frontiers, they paused to align with divine wisdom. They understood that creativity and courage thrive best when liberated from the tyranny of self-preservation. Modern neuroscience inadvertently echoes this wisdom. Studies demonstrate that meditation and gratitude reboot neural circuits, enhancing focus and emotional resilience. Scripture's ancient exhortations, "Be still and know that I am God, cast your cares on Him," turn out to be neurobiologically savvy strategies for thriving. Therefore, the invitation to place your day in God's hands is not escapism, but empowerment. It reconfigures ambition, reframes adversity, and re-enchants routine. It is a deliberate act of spiritual engineering constructing inner architecture, sturdy enough to host peace in a world that profits from panic. The sections that follow will probe the theological foundations, psychological dividends, and practical rhythms of this daily handoff. Yet before we proceed, linger in this reality. The God who flung galaxies into their spirals extends an open palm toward your upcoming conversations, deadlines, and errands. He waits not to control you like a puppet, but to accompany you like a father, infusing mundane chronology with majestic purpose. To accept that offer is to step into the day already loved, already guided, already supplied, a posture that can transform even the most ordinary Tuesday into holy ground. The invitation of this essay is simple yet radical. Before agendas fill calendars and notifications dictate attention, entrust the unfolding hours to the one who calibrated the rhythm of seasons and the tilt of galaxies. Doing so will shape perception, motivation, resilience, and peace. What follows explores the theology, psychology, and daily rhythms that turn this lofty concept into lived reality, tracing how surrender leads not to passivity, but to energized participation in divine purposes. The first layer of placing a day in God's hands is theological vision. Scripture repeatedly portrays God as both sovereign macro-architect and intimate micro-caretaker. The psalmist speaks of a Lord who names the stars, yet keeps tears in a bottle, who paints dawn across horizons, yet notices sparrows falling unnoticed by crowds. This simultaneity matters for daily surrender because it assures us that God is competent enough to handle cosmic complexity and compassionate enough to handle personal intricacies. When you entrust your schedule, you are not tossing it into an impersonal fate, but presenting it to a Father who designed your wiring and understands your context better than any algorithm. Such conviction, however, must migrate from creed to instinct. Many recite, "God is in control," with lips while adrenaline still governs hearts. Shifting from verbal assent to experiential trust requires spiritual disciplines that recalibrate neural pathways. Morning prayer, for instance, is less about informing God of our needs and more about allowing His presence to inform our perception. When Jesus taught His disciples to pray, "Your kingdom come, your will be done," He was offering a template that begins with reverence before requests, aligning spirits before tackling specifics. In contemporary practice, this might look like sitting in silence for several minutes before opening an email, letting the mind settle into awareness that the author of time is already present in the inbox, already aware of every thread, already offering wisdom for tone and timing. Alongside prayer, meditation on Scripture trains imagination to see tasks through a kingdom lens. Consider the verse, "Whatever you do, do it all in the name of the Lord." The phrase, "whatever," democratizes holiness, suggesting spreadsheets can be as sacred as sermons when done with consecrated intent. Reading such passages slowly, picturing the upcoming meeting or errand bathed in God's light, rewires expectations and restores dignity to mundane duties. It also diffuses perfectionism, for if the objective is faithful offering rather than flawless performance, one can embrace progress over pressure. Gratitude journals deepen this posture by chronicling fingerprints of grace across ordinary hours. Neuroscience confirms that rehearsing thankfulness reshapes brain regions governing emotion and resilience. In spiritual terms, gratitude is evidence of trust, the recognition that provision has preceded petition. Each recorded gift becomes a stone of remembrance, building an altar that testifies, God handled yesterday, He can handle tomorrow. Over time, the cumulative weight of these memories shifts default settings from anxiety to anticipation. Surrender also transforms planning itself. Many fear relinquishing control because they equate it with randomness, but biblically informed planning invites partnership. Proverbs says, "Commit your plans to the Lord, and your thoughts will be established," implying a collaborative dynamic. We draft, God directs. Practically, this means holding calendars with open palms, ready to adjust when promptings arise, whether a colleague's unexpected tears, a creative insight mid-commute, or a sudden sense to rest rather than push. Such flexibility is not inefficiency. It is responsive obedience. It mirrors Jesus' rhythm of moving purposefully, yet pausing for interruptions. A bleeding woman in a crowd, a short tax collector in a tree, a storm-tossed disciple at midnight. Each pause became a portal for miracles. The psychology of surrender intersects here. Research on the locus of control shows that people who believe events are externally controlled often experience helplessness, while those with internal control feel empowered. Yet a purely internal locus can inflate self-pressure. Spiritual surrender offers a third way, shared control. You act responsibly, yet ultimate outcomes rest with God. This hybrid fosters diligent effort without existential dread. Athletes who trust the process rather than obsess over results often perform better under pressure. Similarly, believers who trust God's sovereignty approach tasks with focused energy, unburdened by ultimate stakes. Placing the day in God's hands also reshapes relationships. When identity rests in divine love, interactions are freed from the tyranny of proving worth. Conversations become arenas of curiosity, Rather than competition, listening deepens and empathy expands. Forgiveness flows more readily, for the surrendered heart acknowledges its own receipt of mercy and thus extends mercy. Conflict is navigated through questions like, "What does love require here?" rather than, "How can I win?" This shift does not eliminate boundaries. Instead, it grounds them in respect for God's image in self and others. Time management, too, is sanctified. Sabbath, for example, is the quintessential practice of surrendering a slice of the week to God's rhythm. By ceasing labor, we declare trust that provision does not depend solely on perceptual hustle. Daily micro-Sabbaths, brief breaks to breathe, pray, or walk, echo this rhythm. They remind the nervous system that being is as valuable as doing. Ironically, such pauses often boost creativity and efficiency when work resumes, proving that surrender can enhance productivity rather than hinder it. Crucial to this lifestyle is discernment between surrender and avoidance. Some invoke God's hands to dodge responsibility, shrugging off preparation or hard conversations. Genuine surrender, however, intensifies stewardship. Recognizing a day as a divine gift elevates, not diminishes, care. The parable of the talents illustrates that servants entrusted with resources were expected to invest them. Similarly, hours placed in God's hands are meant to be multiplied through wisdom, courage, and perseverance. Laziness masquerading as spirituality dishonors the giver. Fear often resists surrender, whispering that God's plans might derail personal dreams. Yet testimonies across centuries reveal that divine leading often enlarges vision beyond original ambitions. Abraham left familiar territory and became the father of nations. Ruth moved to a foreign land and entered the lineage of kings. Peter stepped out of a boat and walked on water, however briefly. Each act of relinquishment opened destinies inaccessible through self-design alone. Modern stories echo this pattern. Entrepreneurs who pivoted after prayer and birthed companies solving humanitarian crises. Parents who adopted against conventional wisdom and discovered unforeseen joy. Students who switched majors in obedience and pioneered research benefiting thousands. Surrender also equips believers for suffering. When tragedy punctures daily life, those practiced in entrusting moments to God have mental and spiritual muscle memory to lean on. They may still stagger under grief, but they do not collapse into nihilism. They can lament honestly, yet hope fiercely, convinced that the author writes redemption into chapters that appear ruined. This perspective does not trivialize pain. It contextualizes it within a narrative that promises resurrection. Community fortifies this journey. Sharing goals and struggles with trusted friends invites accountability and encouragement. Corporate worship recalibrates collective vision, reminding individuals that they are part of a larger body moving toward a promised restoration. Serving together externalizes surrender, as members collaborate in tasks too big for any one person, yet achievable through combined gifts under divine guidance. Technology presents both challenges and opportunities in this practice. Devices vie for immediate attention, fragmenting focus, and inflating urgency. Yet the same devices can host apps for scripture meditation, prayer reminders, and gratitude tracking. One intentional strategy is digital liturgy, setting specific moments when phones shift from masters to servants of spiritual formation, such as using the alarm label to display a verse or scheduling non-negotiable quiet modes during contemplative practice. This reclaims technology as a tool rather than tyrant. Money is another litmus test of surrender. Budgeting with God's priorities, leisure too is transformed. Restful hobbies become means of delighting in God's creativity. Hiking trails, listening to symphonies, cooking new recipes. Enjoyment without guilt recognizes pleasure as divine gift rather than distraction. Yet discernment guards against escapism. Surrendered hearts savor refreshment to refuel purposeful living. Mission emerges naturally from surrender. When hearts align with God's agenda, compassion overflows borders. Whether mentoring at-risk youth locally or drilling wells globally, individuals sense that their hours are threads in a tapestry of redemption, weaving across continents and centuries. This macro vision prevents the claustrophobia of self-centered living. The practice of exam at day's end bookends surrender. Reviewing moments with God's companionship surfaces patterns of consolation and desolation. Gratitude is voiced, failures confessed, guidance requested for tomorrow. Thus, each sunset hands back the day, completed or unfinished, confident that grace bridges gaps. Over months and years, cumulative surrender fosters distinctive character traits: patience rooted in eternity, courage buoyed by providence, humility sustained by awareness of dependence, and joy sparked by continual discovery of divine surprises. These traits bear witness to a world hungry for authenticity, offering an alternative to cynicism and despair. Placing your day in God's hands is not an incantation for trouble-free living, but a covenant of companionship. It draws a sacred circle around waking hours, declaring that nothing ordinary exists when infused with divine presence. The practice hinges on remembered truths. God is sovereign yet intimate, purposeful yet patient, and the architect of moments both exhilarating and mundane. Within that assurance, plans gain clarity, interruptions acquire meaning, and challenges transform into catalysts for growth. This surrender is renewed each dawn, for trust is a muscle, fatigued by neglect and strengthened by repetition. It thrives on disciplines of prayer, scripture, gratitude, and communal support. It manifests in flexible calendars, attentive conversations, and ethical choices that honor creation and neighbor. Throughout successes and sorrows, it anchors identity in love that pre-exists achievement and outlasts failure. Ultimately, to place a day in God's hands is to participate in a cosmic partnership where finite hours mingle with infinite purpose. It is to live the adventure of faith on the granular canvas of errands, emails, and evening walks, anticipating that the author who began a good work will weave every strand into a tapestry brimming with meaning. As the sun sets on surrendered days, the heart rests not on completed checklists, but on the certainty that grace has held and guided every breath, and tomorrow's dawn will rise within those same faithful hands. The sun's descent is as revelatory as its ascent, painting rooftops gold before bowing behind the horizon, reminding every observer that all days, whether triumphant or turbulent, possess the same destiny: they end. Within that inevitability lies profound liberty. When we place the day in God's hands at dawn and again at dusk, we acknowledge a cyclical grace that both commissions and consuls. We begin by saying, "Here, take this fragile bundle of possibilities and fears." And we finish by whispering, "Thank you for carrying what I could not and blessing what I barely understood." Between those bookends unfolds the grand adventure of partnership with the divine. Expansive surrender does not sterilize life's messiness. It sanctifies it. Tears cried in God's hands water the soil of future joy. Failures surrendered become compost for wisdom. Victories laid at His feet are purified of ego and multiplied into shared celebration. Even unanswered prayers are transfigured, for within divine hands, delay can ripen desire, and denial can redirect destiny. In this way, Surrendered living disarms bitterness and nurtures wonder, teaching the heart to interpret events through the lens of a larger, kinder narrative. Moreover, the practice extends beyond personal well-being into communal transformation. People who wake and rest inside God's embrace tend to speak gentler words, make braver choices, and dream wider dreams. Their presence becomes a quiet revolution, disrupting cynicism with hope and consumerism with generosity. Workplaces lighten under their calm, neighborhoods knit closer through their empathy, and conflicts cool in the shade of their patience. Such ripple effects reveal that the secret epicenter of societal healing may be the humble moment when an individual whispers, "Lord, this day is yours." Finally, placing the day in God's hands is a rehearsal for the ultimate surrender at life's horizon. If we have practiced releasing minutes, we will find it easier to release years, confident that the same hands that steadied our mornings will cradle our final breath and usher us into unending dawn. Thus, today's act of trust is both immediate strategy and eternal rehearsal, stitching the fabric of temporal life to the tapestry of forever. So let tomorrow's alarm ring like a church bell, calling you not merely to tasks, but to worship. Stretch, breathe, and before the onslaught of alerts, slip the keys of the coming hours into the scarred, yet sovereign hands waiting beside your pillow. Step into the day clothed in the assurance that nothing ahead will surprise the one who walks beside you. And when evening shadows lengthen, return the spent hours, whether glorious or gritty, with a child's confidence that the Father receives them all, redeeming, reordering, and readying you for another sunrise of grace. This is the sacred choreography of surrender, the daily dance of finite lives with infinite love, and it begins anew every time you choose to place your day in God's hands.